those things and so much more. Just grab a seat in the chair or the floor. Sit back, relax, recline. Well, she drops another casual line. You're tuned into Casually Molly with Molly and Bergie.
Welcome back to the Casually Molly podcast. For new listeners, my name is Molly Ambergy, and I am a comedian and playwright living right here in St. Louis, Missouri. And if you're a returning casual listener, thank you so much for your patience as we're getting back and running. And for anybody that attended our successful sold-out show at the Golden Hoosier last month, we greatly appreciate it. And we'll talk more about our upcoming show next July at the end of this episode. But enough about that for right now. We always interview different comedians, entertainers, artists, chefs, you name it. And today we are so excited, all the way from Los Angeles. Give it up for comedian Vince Royale, everyone. Oh, the crowd goes wild. Yes.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for reaching out and wanting to be on the show. Before we get started, what brought you to your trip for St. Louis this time around?
I actually have family here now. I married a woman from St. Louis, so I'm originally from Jersey, living in LA, but now I have family here in St. Louis. So every 6 months we come back here to make sure there are no raccoons in the house. Because we have this raccoon problem we're dealing with right now.
Wait, what?
Yeah, it's like a mother and two babies. They're stuck in between the walls. So that happens a lot, apparently,
Wow. Here in St. Louis.
Yeah, in St. Louis.
So every 6 months you do some comedy and check out a raccoon problem.
Yeah, make sure there's no pests. No, but I fell in love with St. Louis. I didn't know a thing about St. Louis up until 4 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I worked different areas of the country, but I've never really, the only thing I knew about St. Louis was barbecue and Nelly. So
That's a very fair assessment. So
when I found out there's civilization here, I was like, well, you know what? I got to try some comedy here.
Yes.
So I fell in love with a lady from St. Louis and fell in love with the city. So I said, I'm going to make it a point to come back here every 3 to 6 months and do shows. So here I am, and I saw you on my news feed. We had mutual friends. I said, I want to do that podcast. I have a show that that was last week, but I was trying to make it or I could promote the show, but it turned out well.
You didn't even need our show because it ended up selling out. Why don't you tell us how that went?
Oh, the Helium, man. I did it with my buddy Brandon Taylor, who's a local, and JB Buchanan. We had
both friends of the show.
Yeah. Super fun show. We ended up selling it out. So that was fun.
Well, that's when you know you're selling out, when you're originally based in the garage at Helium, and then so many people want to come, you get bumped up to the main room, which is very, very cool. So
that was really fun.
Was your family able to come as well?
Yes, they were. So I'm glad my mother and my mother-in-law and my grandma-in-law were able to make it, and we have mutual a bunch of friends that are they'll always come out to support our bingo buddies, Alex and her boyfriend. That's one thing I started doing when I come to St. Louis too, is play bingo.
There's a bingo scene in St. Louis? Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah. I didn't know about the bingo scene up until I married my wife, and she's been a bingo professional. She plays with like 40 different cards, and she has like 10 dabbers, and I don't know if she does it, but
okay. That is cool.
She's a professional.
Yes.
I was very nervous the first time I played bingo with her, because here I am with one card, one dabber, and I'm like, did I hear the right number? Was that G28? And I was like, did I get that one? And
that would be me. So, and Vince's wife is actually sitting off camera, so I keep staring at her. So, like, if anybody is watching this via YouTube and is like, what is she looking at? So she's in on all the jokes, which I'm really appreciative of, excuse me. But speaking of your wife, actually, I was like, we're going to save this for the podcast. Tell us the story about how you and your wife met.
So I was on a show called Cooking on High on Netflix. So this all came together. My wife studied culinary arts, and her and her friends like food, and they're 420 friendly friends.
I got to meet these friends. Yes.
So they recommended the show to her. So they were sitting one day in the living room, and she saw me on the show, and she added me on Instagram. And about a month later, I noticed her on my news feed. So what I did my due diligence and started stalking her on Instagram.
Like you do.
Yeah, you know, I went back as far as like 2-3 years. I'm like, okay, cool, I dig her. And
You're like, I approve of the previous. Yep, got it.
And I finally messaged her and I said, hey man, thanks for following me. I appreciate, you know, the support, whatever. And I said I had a show in Seattle, Washington, and I told her to come out because on her profile it says STL, but I didn't know STL stood for St. Louis. I thought it was Seattle. I didn't pay attention in social studies, so I said, you know what? Come on, just come out. I'm in your town. And she's like, no, I mean, I don't have it like that. I just don't get to travel. I'm like, really? I'm in your hometown and city. You're not going to come out to see me in Seattle? She goes, Seattle? I'm from St. Louis. I'm like, St. Louis? Wait a minute. That's in the middle of the country. What's in St. Louis besides Nelly and barbecue?
Good question.
Yeah, I didn't know. And then we started a long-distance relationship. And we started doing that. I fly to St. Louis, and she'd fly to California. And you know, about a year later, we got married.
What? You guys just like knew. Oh, that is so cute. I do love that. So the reason why I brought this story up was earlier. I was like, oh my gosh, you were on Cooking on High. And the reason I recognized Vince, I was like, I feel like I know this person, and I knew him through my television set, but I still did. And then he's like, oh, I have this great story about how my wife and I met. And I was like, save it for the podcast because we got to keep an eye here. I love that. But that is that's so great. I love that STL in Seattle. But you know, that maybe you did pay attention in social studies. It's just, you know, abbreviations could throw you off. Yeah.
I just didn't know. But I'm glad, like I said, I got to meet some amazing people out in St. Louis, and got a whole new family in this side of the world. So I'm glad that we connected that way. So it was meant to be.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because without my wife, I wouldn't know how to. She does all my flyers and business cards.
She does. I'm going to lift this up. You got the front, and you even have a QR code on the back. This lady has got it going on.
You know, it's comics. We need good graphic designers. So she's very creative.
Absolutely.
She pays attention to details, like you know.
Oh, I love it.
She's like, you're not gonna go on stage with that wrinkled shirt, are you? I'm like, okay, we'll steam it. Like before her, I didn't care. I just threw on the shirt, whatever. And who's gonna notice the wrinkles?
Oh yeah, that's usually how it goes. Especially in comedy, I feel like there's many times when I first started, I was like, oh, I'm gonna throw on a t-shirt and some jeans and put on something. Which, speaking of comedy, you've been seen on Laughs on Fox, Stand Up and Deliver on Hulu, Not for Nothing on Amazon Prime. Has there been a special gig or performance or show that you've done that you've been like, oh, this really meant a lot to me?
You know, my favorite show that I featured in was Cooking on High, because that's how my wife saw me. That's the most important show. You know, it served its purpose. All those were good. They were fun. You know, just like I said, every comedian, when I first started comedy, they put a major importance on being on television.
Oh, okay.
You know, and I started around 2008. So stage time was the most important thing when I first started.
Okay.
Tommy Davidson was the first veteran comedian I met outside of the Laugh Factory. And 6 months in the comedy game, I was like, what do I do, man? I've been going up 5 nights a week, doing the open mics and the coffee shops. What do I need to do? He goes, you got to do it 7 nights a week.
Yeah.
3 to 4 times a night till it's instinctive. He said it's like a comedy zen. You know, you have to trust in the comedy gods. And I was like, what is that? How do I even do comedy 7 nights a week, 3 to 4 times a night? And then I asked my other comedy friends, they're like, well, you're from Jersey and New York. You should just move back. And that's what I did. So I was living in Orange County in LA already. That's why I technically started comedy. But I moved back with my mom in Jersey around 2010, just so I could have more stage time and have access to the comedy scene in Jersey and New York. So I did that for about 2-3 years, and everybody there was like, why'd you move back here? You got to be in LA to get TV credits.
Oh, man.
I'm like, are you kidding me? So I'm just going back and forth. So I did that. I flew back. I moved back to LA around 2013, 14, and got landed my first few TV credits. And now it's like, what do I do now? You just got to get followers and views, man. And then I've been like, you can't just be a comic these days.
Yeah.
You have to be a social media content creator. So I find myself bugging my wife every day, babe, we got to film this skit. we're at the grocery store. It doesn't matter. It's funny. Just film it. Just record, hit record. It's going to be a funny TikTok. It's going to be real. And I annoy the crap out of her, but it's been fun. So I feel like some comics don't want to do that part, but I feel like, you know what, we have to adapt to the current, climate.
Oh, yeah.
And not just have fun with it. That's what I've been doing, just creating reels and skits every day.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, that's actually something I wanted to comment on. Your reels and your skits, I've seen your stuff on Instagram and TikTok. It's very entertaining. Like, I guess, like, for me, when I use TikTok, I'm very new to it, but I still just have, like, a moment of, like, inspiration, right? Where you're like, all right, this is it. It's time. And I'm the same way. I'll grab my significant other, be like, can you stand over here, film it, do this? And he's like, we're working on our lawn. And I'm like, it's just make it work. It's fine. Like, we're going to put music. Is there like a certain time? Do you I guess what I'm saying, do you time out when you put out your social media, or is it just kind of like, I'm inspired, this is my time to do it?
Sometimes it's both. I'll have my ideas, I have my bullet points of ideas, or sometimes I'll just be walking, I'll come up with an idea and be like, babe, we got to do this right now. It's funny. Let's film this. So it's sometimes I just don't want to, I try to be flexible with it. Sure. I don't want to have like, I'm set on these ideas. Because sometimes, like, I'm in the airport, I'm just, I'll be like, hey, babe, while we're waiting for them to start putting people on the plane, let's film this real quick.
Okay.
And what I love about it is like guerrilla style, because I've done TV and I've done film, and there's so much technicalities involved in filmmaking and production. I feel like content creation gives me a lot more freedom because I don't have to get a camera crew. I don't have to feed people. I don't have to work around people's schedule, because I've been on sets, and it's a lot of work. But with me, it's like all I need is my phone and my wife to film me.
Yes.
Or sometimes I film myself.
Hey, oh yeah, those are the best too. And you're just like, let me do a self video, and you put it
like,
up. Yeah.
I can literally just go into the supermarket and be like, all right, cool, let's film this right now.
Yes.
Sometimes you have to deal with noise in the background. You can't be like, quiet on set. The lady who's buying the groceries, shut up. I'm trying to get this skit. So we just have to project a lot more because there's no, like, we're not mic'd up.
Have you ever, what sometimes gets me when you're doing TikToks or like videos? Sometimes I wonder what people are thinking when I'm walking by and making something. Have you ever had a time where maybe you guys have gotten a reaction?
Oh, yeah. And sometimes it makes the video funnier. The natural reaction from the, people, the passersby, they're like, what's happening right now? So we don't tell them it's a prank or a skit. So I like the natural reaction sometimes from people.
Do you think that, speaking of, you are a natural as a comedian and actor, or at least in my opinion, do you think that comes from, I was reading here, you came from Jersey City and you were always kind of like the class clown. Do you think that's always something that's been inherent for you?
I think so. I think, I've always been, since I was a kid, my family always wanted me to perform in front of them. They got a kick out of it. Oh, look, he could dance like Michael Jackson. Look, I was a little performer. And, I was shy actually, from kindergarten all the way to 8th grade. And I think I blossomed in 8th grade when I decided, you know what, I'm tired of being a quiet kid. I'm tired of everybody telling me I'm the nerd. I'm going to be the funny one. So that's when I decided, you know what, I'm going to change my image up.
I like that. I like that.
But it wasn't until, like I said, 2008 until I started comedy. And it wasn't even something I pursued. I was more into like the behind the scenes stuff. I was into music. I was like, man, I want to be the next record label owner. That was my thing. But it wasn't until I was going through I don't want to make this sad. I was depressed in 2008. Okay. I was going through a bad breakup, and I said, I'm just going to drink my life away and to be a professional gambler or pool player at the dive bars. But they happen to have like, open mics and comedy where I used to go. And I'm like, this is fun, man. I can do this crap. All they doing is fucking up there. I didn't mean to cuss. Okay.
We're on a podcast and we have we have the little E next to the explicit. So, all right, cool. We're good.
Anyway, so they're up there. They're ranting, and I'm like, I can do that. I remember going up there, buzzed, and I started ranting about my life, and people were like, oh my God, you're hilarious. I'm like, oh, thanks, man. And the host is like, come back next week. We got a comedy contest. So I started signing up for them, started winning a few contests, and I got hooked. I was like, oh man, I can do this. And yeah, it was years of that doing, grinding it out.
I always appreciate honest answers like that because, there's always that main thing that all comedians ask, like, when did you start doing comedy or like, why did you start it? And I think that's the best response is always when people are like, I saw it and I was like, I can do that. I can make this happen.
I mean, it was fun, the first few parts, but then I realized like, you know what, I can't be sloppy on stage all the time. I can't be drunk, so, and then I've did that for years too. It wasn't until like maybe like my 7th or 8th year in comedy, I was like, wait a minute, man, I don't have to be drunk or smashed on stage to be funny.
Yes. I can really do this.
Wait, so I challenged myself. I'm not gonna drink before I go on stage. Not say I don't drink, but
Right.
but I challenged myself to be sober on stage. Because I realized, you know what? If I'm going to film a special, or if I'm going to do TV spots, I can't be up there freaking slurring and, spitting on the microphone, stuttering my words. I said, let me try to do this professionally.
Yeah. Well, like I said, you've got a great resume. I did want to ask you, you said you're currently on the horror comedy film Attack of the Killer Donuts on Showtime.
Oh, yeah.
What is that about? I'm already intrigued by the title of it.
That's the kind of movie you got to watch when you're stoned. It's much more enjoyable. It's up in there. It's up there with like Sharknado or Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. So, my buddy Steve used to produce these films for, the B horror movies. And he said, he calls me up one day and he goes, he's a big supporter and fan of my comedy. He goes, Vince, man, I got the perfect role for you, man. You're going to share a scene with a guy named C. Thomas Howell. What? I said, what? C. Thomas Howell, if you guys don't know, this guy was from The Outsiders, Pony Boys, Soul Man, right? A bunch of different movies. Like, this guy's a veteran actor and I get to share a scene.
Be in his same,
dialogue with this guy.
Awesome.
So I said, what do I have to do? He goes, you play a guy named Tom the Perp. You're captured you're in the back of the cop car. And the two cops, one of them being C. Thomas Howell and another gentleman, they're going to bring donuts into the car. But these donuts are radioactive donuts, right? You're going to end up eating one of the donuts. These radioactive donuts are going to give you super strength.
What?
Yes. And you're going to break out of custody. You're going to knock out both cops and escape. And I'm like, wow. I was so in awe. I was like, that is epic. That's a major scene. And I was so excited about it. Like, really? I get to assault C. Thomas Howell and as a police officer. It was great, man. If you guys get to see it, like, I don't want to give it away, but I take their heads and I bump them together and I kick the door and the door comes flying off the cop car and I have this super strength and I'm running. I'm like, yes, I will do that. No problem. He goes, but just to let you know, there is a death scene. You're going to have to die. I'm like, that's fine. I'm going to
You're like, that's okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I said, that's fine. I'm going to give it my all because I took acting classes, But I said, I'm ready for this. I'm preparing for this role. Like, how do I die? Like, do I, get it gunned down or something? He goes, no, because the effects of the radioactive donuts is like really violent diarrhea. I was like, what? He goes, yeah. So what's going to happen is you're on the side of the road and you get hit by some teenagers, right? And while I get hit by the car, I get up and as I'm standing there, I basically crap my, self to death.
Yeah.
Like a huge blob of diarrhea comes out of me. And then the kids freak out and they leave me on the road to die.
Oh my God.
Yeah. You got to watch it. It's a real crappy movie.
I am so intrigued by this now. I really need to see this.
And that's only my parts. Imagine the rest of the movie. So I'm not going to give away the rest of the movie. So guys, get stoned one day and watch Attack of the Killer Donuts. It's on demand on Showtime, I believe. And you can probably, it's a big hit in Japan and India.
Oh,
it's
I
doing.
wouldn't be
They got like
surprised,
a cult following. So if I ever make it out to Bollywood, I am
Yes.
apparently a star in the Bollywood circuit.
Oh my gosh. Did you ever think that you would be a star in the Bollywood circuit, starting out in comedy, and now here you are?
No, not at all. I'm killing it, apparently,
Yes.
in markets that I've never been to.
Well, so, speaking of working on markets and things like that, what do you think was one of the biggest lessons, I guess, you learned when you started out comedy to today that you've taken with you as you've pursued your career?
The biggest lesson is humility. Because, oh man, a lot of comics, we tend to have a lot of ego. We're at the top 1 minute, and the next thing you know, wait a minute, you ain't hear from him in a while. So check your egos. There's a lot of egos in the entertainment business. Because there's one time when my show first came out, everybody was blowing up my phone.
Which show was this?
Cooking on High. I was on Netflix, all over Netflix. That whole summer I was hot. Everybody was in my inbox. Yo, I just saw you on TV.
Including your wife. That was a good slide into the DMs. Good job.
I'm like, man, I thought I was the man. I was like, yeah, man, I'm finally on Netflix. I'm a headline everywhere I go now. But that show fizzles out. And next thing you know, you just have to maintain, it's about longevity. I've seen I've been doing comedy for going on 14 years now. And there are a lot of comics that I've started with, some of them blew up too fast and you don't hear from them anymore. So it's like, for me, it's about longevity and checking your ego, because sometimes you'll be hot 1 minute, but
Yeah. No, as I was a theater major, and that was one of the things we learned in theater was that, sometimes you're going to be that shiny thing sometimes, and then there's going to be other times where maybe it isn't always that way.
Right. And always don't compare yourself to other people. I used to make that mistake. Like people I started comedy with, I watched them on they have their own HBO or Netflix specials. And I'm like, man, I started with that guy. How come he's doing better than me? You can't do that. Everybody has a different path, Right now, I'm actually planning to shoot my first special after 14 years. So in the next few months, I'm working on that. And I thought about it. I'm like, if I film my special 4 or 5 years into comedy, it wouldn't be the same as I deliver it now, because I'm a lot more polished. I'm a lot more comfortable on stage. I mean, I was funny back then, but it's a different kind of funny now, where it's like, wait a minute, I'm able to have more fun and be myself on stage versus just being funny on stage. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So now I'm glad that it did come at this time. I'm like, I could deliver a better product now than I did, a couple years ago.
Oh yeah. I think it's like a thing you learn in comedy too, is that, you think sometimes you're like, oh, this is the best material. This is the best material I'm going to have. And then all of a sudden, as you keep going, you're like, oh, this is so much better than what I maybe had.
And you're like, wait a minute.
3 or 5 years ago. What? Yeah.
I can say this joke better this way. The bit that I've been doing a couple of years ago, I could flip it, because if I take this out or say it this way, it's a lot funnier.
Yes.
Because jokes never really end,
Yeah. Oh, well, speaking of things that you also have been working on and jokes and whatnot, earlier before we started recording, you and your wife were talking about you produce different shows in California. Are you still doing that as well?
Absolutely. So I do a monthly show at the Rec Room in Huntington Beach. This is a brand new club. We're doing our first show there. We'll probably do that monthly. It's called the Stand Up Comedy Club in Bellflower, and we do a weekly show in a place called the City Grill in Covina, California. So if you guys ever in California, come by, check out one of our shows. Just find me on Instagram. That's how you get tickets. But I'm usually, like I said, I have a different lineup every show. So it's usually national headliners. And we make sure, my wife and I, she actually helps me book the comics now.
Oh, good.
Because I'm tired of people that's hitting up my inbox. Hey, man, can I get a spot?
Geez.
Bro, I haven't spoke to you in 6 years.
And then all of a sudden you have a show and people start calling you.
Now I'm your friend. Yeah, you didn't call me during lockdown. Didn't check on me when I was freaking going through my crisis.
Where were you then?
Exactly. Where were you when I had to deal with the raccoons at my in-laws' house? Nobody was there. I dealt with the raccoons on my own. See? Comedians aren't your friends. Only when you have a show. That's when they want to be your friend.
I have.
Oh, you got a podcast, Molly? Oh, my God.
And then that's how Vince ended up here. He was like, what's it about? I was just like,
You're not
wants to come on. I have no idea.
Nobody wants to be your friend unless you have a show or a podcast.
Oh, always. And then suddenly, it's like, hey, But Vince, I am very happy on a serious note to have you here for sure. But that's awesome. Speaking of like booking comics, you know, you do a weekly show. How do you guys kind of decide like, oh, you know, for mine at the Golden Hoosier here, I always kind of be like, okay, here's the headliner I want, and here's the flow that I want of people. How do you guys view your process?
I'm old school when it comes to like putting comedy lineups. I mean, I don't knock anybody who puts together 10, 12 comics on one show. I like to keep it like, you know, host, opener, feature, and headliner. That's it. Very simple, man.
Same here.
Maybe a guest spot, you know, the 4 or 5 comics the most, but that's it. I just like to keep it very simple. I don't need 12 comics on the show. It just basically people get burnt out and tired, you know. And I guess I've seen a lot of comics do that because not everybody has 15, 20 minutes of material. So okay, we're just gonna get 10 of our new comic friends to do 10 minutes each, and that's cool because I've done those shows, you know. But you know, after a while, you just have to like, you know what? Let's keep it shorter. Sometimes quantity doesn't exactly equal better, right? But you know, I don't know. Me personally, I like to keep my shows with less comics.
Sure. Oh yeah. And sometimes it's a little bit tighter and concise with that too. And again, I've done shows with a lot of comics on them, but sometimes it's a little bit easier to have that for sure. Also, you know, you're in California. Do you feel like that's where you guys will probably be staying?
Yeah, you know, we entertained the idea of moving to Vegas before while we were in lockdown, but when I came there, I was like, nah, I'm not ready to retire yet. You know, I got to be where the action is.
Yes.
You know, if I wanted a residency, then I'll move to Vegas. But no, I'm still ready. Like, I still have it in me. I still have a lot more fuel left. So New York or LA is where I need to be. And St. Louis every 3 to 6 months, you know.
There you go. Oh, yeah, you got to check in on the raccoons.
Exactly.
So, I love that. You know, speaking of New York, too, is there, I guess, you know, everybody kind of has maybe like one coast they like better than the other. I mean, honestly, sometimes, you know, it's just more about where you're getting work and where you need to be. Is there something, do you seem to like California better than New York or New York better than California?
You know, when I was in New York, I loved the comedy scene in New York. Like I said, that's where I got 3 to 4 spots a night because they're all walking distance from each other. In LA, in California, you have to drive from one gig to another.
Yeah.
There's a lot of driving involved. You know, in New York and Jersey, it was just a subway or a cab ride to your next spot or even walking distance. That I appreciated that because I was able to, it definitely pushed me to grow as a comic, you know, performing in front of different audiences and hitting the road too. I did that for a while, man. I kind of taking a break from it, but I was definitely a road warrior a couple of years ago, driving from California to Nevada, Arizona, Montana, Idaho, Oregon, Washington, doing these little, you know, one-nighters. And that definitely made me a stronger comic too, because on the road, you can do 30 minutes to an hour. You know, you can't do a lot of that in the big cities. Big cities only give you showcase spots, like in LA. It's good to be seen though, in the bigger markets.
Oh, absolutely. Was there, when you were on the road, was there a specific place that you were like, oh, wow, I never thought I'd be performing here, but, you know, here I am. And
yes.
What did you like about it? Or dislike?
There was a lot of sketchy places I've been to, but then I'm like, wow, people love comedy here. And plenty with Montana.
Wow, comedy in Montana. Okay.
Yeah, and it was crazy because Montana's like 30 years behind from the rest of the country. It was the places, it was sketchy because the phone service I have doesn't work in Montana. So there are plenty of times that we had to rely on physical maps, like we're taking it back. Like, dude, I have to try to remember how to read a map because GPS doesn't work in Montana. My GPS didn't.
Mine didn't either. It's all good. Yeah.
And so, you know, there'd be random casinos in the middle of like Oregon or Washington, and they were so fun. And I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
I never thought I'd be performing in a casino in the middle of nowhere, but it'd be great crowds that would appreciate, you know, the comedy.
Oh yeah, I'm always finding like different pockets of the country where I'm like, oh, I had no idea there was such an interest in comedy, but you know, here we are. So that's very cool that you're doing that to make you feel better. When I was in Montana, you know, I didn't realize there's not like an Uber or a Lyft or anything like that. There's nothing.
Not a lot
and I had to flag down this girl who was driving a Lexus. Like we just had like this feeling, and I was like, I need a ride back to my Airbnb. So I got Jimmy and we popped in there.
Wait, so you just you jumped in a random Lexus?
I definitely did. I just saw this girl. We had a meeting of the minds. I just was like, she goes, "You're not going to murder me." And I was like, "No, I'm definitely not.
Good.
I just need to go to my place." But yeah, I was like, only in
Hitchhiking,
Montana.
yeah, before Uber and Lyft, hitchhiking was a thing.
Yeah.
Remember, that's what I mean. Montana is like 20, 30 years behind.
It's just, there was not, they were like, we just don't have any, they had maybe one Lyft driver that I found, but the Lyft driver was picking up everybody else in this little town that we were in.
Well, you know what? It made us stronger as comics.
Yes.
When you feel like, you know what, I might be murdered tonight,
Yeah.
but you know what, I'm going to be a great comic.
Yes. I just told her, I was like, I do comedy. I'm from St. Louis. And she's like, oh, okay. She's like, I'm from here. I lived here my whole life. And she was making me laugh because I should have put this in a bit, but she was like, I crashed my car the other day, so I just went out and bought this new one. So I was her first passenger in the Lexus. I was like, oh my God. But I'm so glad she drove me because there's no lights there either in Montana.
No,
there's
no.
That was scary. I was like,
Yeah,
what?
that's where Sasquatch lives.
Yeah.
And a lot of UFO sightings, I think.
Oh, wow. I
Yeah.
got to look into this for sure. Oh, that's good. Oh, I'm glad we bonded about Montana. That's awesome. Now, you've been touring internationally, as you have mentioned in your bio, for over a decade. Where can we see you maybe coming up?
Well, I'm back in California this week, so
Okay.
I'm going to be at the Agua Caliente Casino this Friday. Open up for my buddy Jimmy Della Valle. And I'm back in the Rec Room this Saturday too in Huntington Beach.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'm in Utah next month. So, but all my shows, I don't remember all of them off the top of my head. But if you go into my Instagram, I have a link tree link there on my bio. You click on that and it'll have all my upcoming shows and dates.
Perfect. And we'll make sure to, in the bio that we'll share and obviously the description, just make sure that you follow at the Casually Molly podcast on Instagram.
And please, also on my Instagram and my TikTok, I create videos on a daily basis. So please, I need followers and views.
Yes, absolutely. Give a like. Just if you like something, it's just a quick tap, and that's what we need. We need some views, we need some likes, we need some love. It's the whole reason we're in comedy in the first place. I say that. Speaking of, first of all, Vince, thank you so much for coming on.
For having me.
Oh, of course. You talked about humility earlier, which is great. At the end of each episode, we always say, like, kind of like that cheesy question, what casual advice would you give to up-and-coming comedians that are interested in the industry? Because we have a lot of people that'll listen for advice like that. You obviously talked about humility. Is there anything else maybe you can think of that would be helpful to pass on?
Just set ego aside, and I'm going to tell newer comics what I was told when I started comedy is that respect the craft. You know, respect the craft, master the craft, go up as much as you can. Mm-hmm. You know, don't treat it if you treat it as a hobby, then it'll, but if you treat it as a career and as a profession, then it's of course, come back to you. So that's how you have to approach comedy. You know, depends on what you want to do with it. I mean, if you just need a hobby and you need therapy, then it's cool too. But if you want to do it professionally and just respect the craft, go up as much as you can, and yeah, man, just be nice to everybody you meet.
Every comic I've had on here is always saying be nice to people every time. So that's really cool to see that we have a common theme. Make sure again that you follow at Vince Royale on Instagram. His link tree will be there as well. It will include all of his shows. Make sure that you follow him on TikTok. Give us some likes, everything. And then for the Casually Molly podcast, at the Casually Molly podcast on Instagram. Also, just give us a little subscription on YouTube if you're following on there. The last question we'll ask you, Vince, before you head out today, we always say, what are you going to casually do now that our episode is over?
Man, I'm going to get a St. Paul sandwich because that's one thing you can't get anywhere. You can only get that in St. Louis.
Now, actually, I don't know. And originally I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio. So that's why I need to learn some of these St. Louis things. Where is a St. Paul sandwich? Any
Chinese restaurant. You ask for a Chinese, right, babe? It's a St. Paul sandwich. It's basically egg foo young, lettuce, tomatoes, onions, and in a sandwich.
Oh.
And I didn't know you can do that.
No,
I'm like, wow. It's called a St. Paul sandwich. Only in St. Louis.
Only in St. Louis.
And depending on the weather, my wife might take me to the St. Louis Zoo.
Oh, yes.
Because it's free, and I love animals.
Yes, absolutely. That's always a plus. If you love animals and you love free, if you're in St. Louis, the St. Louis Zoo is the place to go. But I feel like I learned a lot about St. Louis today. I learned that bingo is a hit here.
Oh, yeah.
And you can get a St. Paul sandwich. This is like life-changing, everybody. Vince Royale had to come all the way from Los Angeles to Jersey City to teach me about
Come on
St.
now,
Louis.
Molly. You're a local. You should know these things.
I gotta
man.
know. I gotta know.
Well, next time I come back, we'll definitely do bingo.
Yes.
And I'll get you a St. Paul sandwich.
Okay, perfect. Done. And if it makes you feel any better, I'll be there for the raccoon check if needed. So.
Thank you. We appreciate that. Hopefully they're gone today.
Hopefully they're gone. No, I understand when I go back to Cincinnati, there's always birds that I had to save a bird that got stuck in one of the blinds, and my sister and my mom have this deadly fear of birds, so I had to go save one out of they left the house and waited till I got back from a show to go get the bird out. But I saved his life, so I get it.
It's hard to sleep when you're scratching
Yep.
at night. It's like, is that in between the walls? What is that scratching?
Oh, yes. Just some Midwest problems for you. Scratching from the raccoons and the birds. I love it. Well, I won't hold you back from your St. Paul sandwich, but thank you so much for watching or listening. And just casually have a great rest of your night, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.